they bought government bonds, and when interest rates went up from 10-year note, treasury note yield to maturity went from like 1.75 to like 4. All those bonds lost 80% of the value. That's what happens on long duration bonds. Bond math is simple: rates up, price down, vice versa. Well, the rates were up, the price was down, so they were underwater and insolvent, and they got shut down. So Barney Frank's out whining the next day. He's like, "Hey, yeah, but that's true of every bank in the country. There's not a bank out there that didn't load up on treasury bonds at 1.75. They're all underwater. They're all
Yeah.
insolvent." And by the way, the Fed announced a facility. They always have these four initials. I forget what this one was, a BA or whatever. But basically, what they said was, if you're a member bank and you have treasury securities that are where the mark-to-market value is below par, so you paid 10 million, but they're only worth 8 million, and that was the case across the board. So like a trillion dollars or more of bonds that were in that category. You can deliver them to us, and we will lend you for 1 year the face value. So you're putting up 80 cents of collateral, but you're getting a 100-cent loan. I said, I got a 15-year-old car. Will you lend me what I paid for it? Because it's a lot more than it's worth now. But that's what they did. So now my head's spinning. I'm like, well, I get all this stuff, but I'm like, oh, so you just guaranteed every deposit in the banking system without limit, and you just guaranteed every treasury bond at par value without limit.
Yeah.
What's left? Like, what else do you have in your bag of tricks? Because you don't have it. There's nothing else you can do.
In this video, Jim Rickards provides insightful analysis into recent financial events, shedding light on the vulnerabilities of major banks and offering crucial metrics for savvy investors to consider when assessing a bank's risk. Rickards begins by discussing the significant events involving major institutions like Credit Suisse and UBS, highlighting the interconnected nature of the financial system. He emphasizes the importance of evaluating metrics such as the ratio of uninsured deposits to total deposits, where a ratio exceeding 30% signals potential risk for a bank. Furthermore, Rickards introduces the concept of total assets and distinguishes between banks deemed too big to fail and those in a middle ground category. He provides a list of banks falling into this middle ground category, emphasizing the need for depositors and stockholders to carefully assess their exposure to potential risks. Let's get back to the video.
Go back to 2008, they guaranteed every money market fund in the country. So, but here's Barney Frank whining, hey, yeah, my bank was in trouble, but so was every bank in the country. Why did you whack me and give all these guys a pass? Well, the answer is Signature Bank was another crypto bank. It had a portal called Signet. And Signet was a portal to the crypto world. And that's why they whacked it. Notice they whacked two crypto banks. So now it's Monday morning, where are we now? The 13th. Everyone's asking Janet Yellen, like, wait a second, what just happened? You guaranteed every deposit in the banking system. And she's like, well, no, not really. It's only if you're systemically important. And you're like, okay, could you please define systemically important so we can tell? Because we're getting our money out of all the banks that are not. And the truth is you can't, because the system is so densely interconnected. And this is why they say financial contagion. I mean, it's a metaphor, but actually the mathematics of a viral spread, we just went through a pandemic, but this has been true, for as long as it's been studied. The mathematics of viral contagion are identical to the mathematics of financial contagion. The equations are the same, the way it spreads. And of course, Janet Yellen can't define systemically important. Number one, they try, but they can't. Number two, I don't care how small you are. If you're a small bank and there's a run, the guy across the street, he's getting his money out of that bank. And again, it's like COVID. It's like it just keeps going until the system collapses, which means by definition, just by the dynamics, there's no such thing as a bank that's not systemically important, because they're all connected. Even the little banks are borrowing from the big banks, et cetera. So Janet Yellen hemmed and hawed and didn't have a good answer. She never does. She's not that bright. And so there we are. So the Fed has guaranteed every bond at par value, even if you're worth 20% less. And the FDIC has guaranteed every deposit. And Janet Yellen can't give you a good definition of what's covered and what isn't. Now a week goes by. What's on tap for the next weekend? Again, Friday night press release, shotgun wedding, Credit Suisse and UBS. Now you're talking to big guys. These are two of the biggest, oldest banks in the world. I think Credit Suisse have been around since the 1870s maybe, and I'm not sure about UBS, but they were the two biggest banks in Switzerland. So
Yep.
Credit Suisse fails, and they get taken over by UBS. Okay, and now everyone's like, oh, "What's next? Who's next?" And there's a list. I'll go through it in a minute. What factors come into play? How can I think about whether a bank is likely to fail or not, regardless of whether they're getting bailed out? And there are two metrics that are really good. One is look at the ratio of uninsured deposits to total deposits. If that number is more than 30%, you're a sitting duck. And in Silicon Valley's case, it was 97%. They were 97% uninsured. So a little local bank that's got, I'll say 30% uninsured and 70% insured, they're very unlikely to have a bank run. Most of those customers are like, hey, I'm covered. I'm good. I got 100,000 in the bank. All good. But when you're up north of 30, certainly north of 50, 70, 80, 90, you're an accident waiting to happen. Yeah. The other metric is total assets. So there really are too big to fail banks. Doesn't mean they can't fail, but it means they're 100% guaranteed to get bailed out. And that list is well known. So who's too big to fail? Like, you can put your money in, they can screw up really badly, and you're not going to get hurt as a depositor. Right. JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Goldman, the usual suspects: Goldman Sachs, US Bancorp, Capital One, TD, State Street, Citi, B of A, Morgan Stanley, PNC Financial, Bank of New York Mellon, Truist Financial, and BMO Harris. They're the giants. Okay, I'm not saying they can't fail. I'm saying that there'll be a safety net put under them, and no one's going to lose anything except maybe stockholders, but not bondholders, not depositors. But there's another category where you're bigger than the local savings bank, but you're not too big to fail. You're not on the list of giants. And these are banks with between approximately 100 billion and 400 billion of assets. When you get up closer to $1 trillion of assets, you're in the big leagues. But 100 billion to 400 billion of assets, you're big, and you're not too big to fail, but you're big enough to take down the system if you do. And these are the ones that are vulnerable, and these are the ones where depositors and stockholders in particular, really need to drill down. I'm not saying get all your money out tomorrow, but the banks that fit that category that I just described: Citizens Bank, Manufacturers and Traders, Comerica, Webster, East West Bank, First Citizens Bank, City National Bank, not Citibank, but City National, First Horizon, Western Alliance, Valley National, Synovus, Frost Bank, Pinnacle Bank, Cadence Bank, BOK Financial, and South State Bank. That's the list of banks that are big enough to cause a systemic crisis, but not literally too big to fail. These are, and we, in our newsletters, we occasionally put out recommendations, not all at once, but buy put options on this bank because we think they're shaky. And remember, the stock can go way down, and the bank can still get bailed out. In other words, even if the bank gets bailed out and depositors don't lose money, it doesn't mean your stock can't go from 50 to 10. And that's that's no reason to buy a put option.
Throughout the discussion, Rickards navigates through the complexities of the financial system, drawing parallels to the dynamics of viral contagion. He underscores the critical need for investors to stay informed and vigilant in assessing the stability of financial institutions. If you found this information valuable, don't forget to subscribe for more insightful content. Like the video if you enjoyed Rickards' analysis, and share your thoughts in the comments section below. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussions on financial markets and investment strategies.